Bonsoir, camarades.
Hello, comrades. I'm going to talk in French. Thank you, everyone, for being here in this plenary on housing. Before we start, I wanted to give the floor to Vladimir Simovic, and I think it's an important moment for the colleagues in Serbia.
You can take the floor.
Okay. Comrades, friends, a year ago in Novi Sad, the canopy of a newly renovated railway station collapsed, killing 16 people. It was not an accident. It was the product of corruption, of a system where profit comes before people and where human lives are sacrificed for contracts and political gain. Out of that tragedy rose something that Serbia had not seen for years: a student-led movement joined by workers, teachers, farmers, and citizens across the country. From Belgrade to Novi Pazar, from big cities to forgotten villages, people took the streets. In a society long divided by nationalism and fear, they built something profoundly new: solidarity. And today, at this very moment, in the city of Novi Sad, more than 100,000 people are gathered, demanding justice for the victims. It is one of the largest demonstrations Serbia has ever witnessed. The call for accountability has become a call for democracy itself. For nearly a year, these protests have continued despite violence and repression. Citizens have been beaten, detained, and called terrorists. Yet they persist, because they know the justice for 16 victims is also justice for an entire society captured by corruption and authoritarian rule. The struggle in Serbia is not only about one tragedy or one government. It is about reclaiming democracy from authoritarianism, public good from private greed, and solidarity from the politics of division. Let us stand with them, not as observers, but as comrades. When the people of Novi Sad, Belgrade, or Novi Pazar rise against corruption and violence, they defend the same values as the left across Europe share: social justice, equality, and the right to live with dignity. Now I ask you all, let us honor the 16 lives lost and the thousands still fighting for a free and democratic Serbia. Let us stand together for a minute of silence. Slava im. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Vladimir.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. Today we are talking about housing, and I'm going to do the facilitation. So welcome everyone. Today, as I said, we are talking about the housing crisis in Europe and about solutions in several countries, and the comrades here in Austria represent the youth. And also we have the Spanish delegates. We have a double objective here. First of all, we want to diagnose the situation in terms of the gravity of the situation that has afflicted our continent, and we also want to work together with our comrades who are here today to work out solutions and proposals for social housing and see where the trade unions can help in all of Europe. So 2 blocks of conversation, and everybody will get a chance to participate and ask questions as well. So I'm going to provide a framework for Europe, and then I'm going to pass the word to my colleagues here. In terms of the European crisis, it's important to know that we have a plus of 6% or 5.5% of inflation in Europe. So there's a lot of tension in the households and the budgets. And on average, the various countries, for example, Portugal, we have a plus of 17%, in Bulgaria, 17% in Croatia. So this is the housing market, 12%, and in Spain, 10%. And we also have a lack of residential buildings. And looking at the figures from 2010, then we can see 60% in all of Europe, and especially the rents have risen dramatically. And there's also the human cost. This market has repercussions on the lives of people. In 2023, 9% of the European population had to spend more than 60% of their income on housing. That is just the average in across all of Europe, and behind these figures there's a lot of drama, a lot of difficulties and tragedies, personal tragedies. Sometimes we are having the wrong discussion. We're talking about competencies, but this should be a debate about human rights, and for this we have tried to initiate a campaign, a housing campaign on a European level, because it's not a privilege to have an apartment or a roof over your head. So much for the introduction. My comrades are going to speak in greater detail about this topic. Here we have our colleague from the Austrian Trade Union Federation, Christian Fölzer, then Sandra, Bernad, who coordinated the Young European Network, and we also have Christoph from the Communist Party of Austria, to my right, and then Enrique Villalobos, Head of Housing, Urban Planning and Environment in Madrid. And I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague. The floor is yours.
Hello to everybody. I'm Christian Fölzer. I'm the head of the International Department of the Trade Unions for Bricklayers and Woodworkers in Austria. And why I'm here is the following. The trade union, our trade union, has in its hand 4 companies dealing with housing. 2 of those 4 companies are in the social sector, and 2 of these are in the private sector. And I'm in the supervisory board of all of them. And in one of those, in the so-called GEWOC, I'm the head of the supervisory board. So we deal this for about, not I only, but we as trade unionists deal this since the 50s. I'm a member of the board since 2013, so for more than 12 years now. First of all, I come back to 5 minutes ago, we heard something about Serbia, and I have to say that we as trade unionists in Austria, we as trade unionists from the bricklayers and woodworkers deal with our colleagues in Serbia because Austrian firms are in Serbia. They're present there, and we as trade unionists are looking for the collective agreements there. So we have close contact with them, and we also discuss political things. And from time to time, I'm in Serbia for the last time about 10 months ago, and we discussed also this accident we heard before. And the reason why I was in Serbia last year is the same as I'm here. We had a seminar concerning social housing. So what's going on in Austria? And I will tell you something about housing problems, but also probably about solutions, what we see as solutions. First of all, I have to mention that I learned at school that Austria has 7 million inhabitants. Vienna itself has 1.5. And this is true for about 30 years ago. And nowadays we have 2.1 million in Vienna and 9.2 million in Austria. So what does it mean if you have a city with 550,000 people more than 25 years ago? That also has something to do with housing. There's also something to do with the costs of living. So we are those who have to deal with it. And then you have to look at the geography of Austria. Austria is a country with loads and loads of mountains. And if you look at these mountains, you see that you don't have flat land. You just have flat land here in Vienna, let's say on the opposite side of the river Danube, but you don't have flat land for building houses on the other side of the river, or nearly no land. This is also true for other states in Austria. Probably for those coming from abroad know where Salzburg is, a very famous and nice city, but it's also more or less in the Alps. And if you look at the country, you will see that you can't have flat land. And what do you need when you build houses? We do that. You have flat land. But if there is no space, you can't buy this flat land, and you can't do what you should do. Now, this is what we want to do, build more and more houses. And these houses should be affordable. Affordable to those people which we represent. And these are mostly bricklayers, woodworkers, and others. Painters, for instance, carpenters. And they earn not that much money which is needed. So when they spend in Austria, let's say 1/3 of their net salary, it's loads and loads of money. And what we do as trade unionists, and I have to tell you that we, in our two enterprises, which deal with social housing, has all in all 45,000 units in our hand. And out of the 45,000 units, we have about 30,000 apartments. The others are garages, shops, and things like this, parking space. But 30,000 units are apartments. And we build that, we renovate that, we invest. And if you see the overall situation in Austria, you will find that all in all, 185 enterprises dealing with social houses in Austria. And plus some cities, especially the city of Vienna, own their own flats, their own apartments, so that people can live in subsidized apartments. And these subsidized apartments, especially in Vienna, are 220,000. This is the largest number all around the world. And other cities in Austria own about 80,000, more or less. So about 300,000 flats are in the hand of communities. And what do these communities do? They invest in new ones, they invest in old ones, they renovate them according to environmental problems, to solve these problems. This is also what we do. And what does it mean at the end of the day? There's no such pressure on the market as in other countries. We also often compare the city of Vienna with the city of Munich in Germany. And you have the rents in Germany, and if you compare them with the rents in Vienna they're lower. And why they're lower? Because we are subsidized and we get the money from the public, invest in new houses, invest in new apartments. The town has apartments itself, and this means that the pressure on the market is not that high. Although Vienna is growing. Other cities are growing as well. The second largest town in Austria is Graz. I learned at school 30 years ago that Graz has 220,000 inhabitants. Now it has 310,000 or something. So nearly 90,000 people more in the same city. And this means something for the housing market. And if you have subsidized apartments, the pressure goes down. And this is, let's say, the crucial point of the so-called Austrian model of social housing, and this would be the start of my things, and I come back to you probably a little bit later to describe what we as trade unionists really do and why we are doing that and what do we do in the future. That means renovate them according to environmental policy. Thank you.
Je lui donne la parole à Sandra.
I give the floor to Sandra.
Let's talk about what the young people in Spain considers their first problem, housing. In Spain and in my organization, Izquierda, Unida, you stop being young when you are over 30, 31. You stop participating in the youth and you pass to the adult phase. In Spain, the average age for the young people to emancipate is 30 years. The young people in Spain emancipate when they stop being young. Now we have two solutions. We can increase the limit that we consider young, or we can stop considering housing as a business, and we can start creating solutions to return housing to its social funds. In Spain, the situation of the housing in the youth is that only 1 out of 6 young people leave their parents' home, and when they are under 30 years. When you leave your parents' home, you have 2 options. You can share a room with several unknown people, or you can try to live by your own. You can rent a flat only for you. But if you decide to rent a flat only for you, you will have to pay the 92.3% of your salary only for the rent. Now, you can try to understand how you will live with this 7.7% of the salary that is left every month. Then, the most young people choose to share a room with 5 unknown people till you have 34 years. It's the average age the young people stop sharing flats. And that means that 1 out of 5 young people with work is in situation of poverty. We are in the government. We have a really good rates in employment. The youth unemployment falls till the 19.1%. This is the lowest rate since 2007. But In the young people lower than 25 years, this rate goes till the 24.9%. What that means? That we are all day hearing that we are what in Spain we said the Nini generation, the crystal generation, the generation that we are always complaining. And they also said us, encouraged us to fight more because we are the future of the young people is the future. We are the future generation. But we can't think in the future of the youth. We can't even plan the future of the youth if we are struggling to survive the present. If we don't have enough salary to pay our rent and keep living, and stop thinking about how many coffees can I pay this month after I pay the rent. These are statistics that the Spanish Emancipation Observatory creates every year. And it says that this Nini generation means that, I don't know if in other countries, but in Spain, the young people is always hearing that we are lazy, and okay, that we are lazy and we don't want to work, we don't want to study, and because the reason that we can't leave our parents' home is because we don't want to. We are lazy. We're just lazy. But the reality is absolutely the opposite. We are the yes generation. The 35.5% of the young people who are working is studying at the same time. Because one of the reasons is because they need to work to pay their studies. So, to sum up, we are the yes generation. The yes generation to work and study at the same time. The yes generation to a precarious contracts. Because yes, we have jobs, but we have a job with the minimum salary. We have to fight all day to have our labor's rights. We are the yes generation to share a flat till we have 34. We are the yes generation to enchain unpaid internships. We are the yes generation to move every six months because we enchain temporary contracts, and we have to move because we can't pay the rent. We are the yes generation that has to go back to live with their parents. And we are the yes generation that we have labor schedules that doesn't allow us to live. And why I said this? Because we, as Izquierda Unida, are in the government, and we have the Ministry of Youth and Housing. We are in a coalition government, youth and children, sorry. We, as Izquierda Unida, are in a coalition government with the Socialist Party. And we don't have any competences in housing as the ministry, because there is an exclusively Ministry of Housing that belongs to the Socialist Party. That means that we have to struggle every day and battle every day to put and create public policies that put the center of the public policies of housing, that is human rights. We have a Minister of Housing that prefers to meet with Airbnb than with the tenants union. And this means that we have to fight over another ways. We have to work with some associations, with some entities, and I will explain you later in the solution block some funny stories that we face with the real estate lobby when we, as a ministry that has no competence in housing, try to face some of the abuses of power that the real estate lobby try every day. So we will talk about that later.
I will present gracias, pardon, c'est ma langue maternelle, donc je vais lui dire merci.
Merci, thank you for the statement. I will now give the floor to Christoph Hale from the Communist Party of Austria.
I'm representing the Communist Party of Austria, and as you will know, this is a rather small party. We are not, as of yet, even present in the national parliament, but in the last few years, we saw a growth. On a federal and an urban level, we are represented in the government now, in some towns and some counties. We have a growth in membership, and we also have in other elections, like the general election and the election for the European Parliament, not sufficient, but still very welcoming and by far the best results for the last years. And there are many reasons for this. But one of those reasons is our focus on housing. And another indicator for this is that other parties also stepped in on the whole housing issue. What I want to say is, although we have this big part of social housing, state-supported housing, there is a housing issue in Austria. Maybe not as harsh as in other countries, of course, but still, we also have to see that it is not as possible as it was before for people to build their own house because of land prices and construction prices that had a steep increase. It was harder to get private credits to build your house, as in the rural areas as well as in the urban areas. And on the other hand, Austria has a very high percentage of tenants, and not all of those people live in the government-subsidized sector. And due to limited contracts, to a fragmented tenancy law, to the coupling of the rent increases with the consumer price index, and way too little efforts in the public housing sector, the rents have increased in the last few years by very big margins. The margins are that big that now people are really facing problems. And this is also a reason why when we are concentrating or focusing on housing, we see more support by the people. The reasons for the increase in the housing prices are the multiple crises like the pandemic, the imperialist warmongering, the aftermath of real estate speculations, touristical short-term rental agreements, and so on. The problem was the government didn't react in time, and it did not react in a satisfying way up to this day, even though there are now some measures taken to make things a bit better, but this is still not the stuff we need. Housing is a fundamental right, and if we take that seriously, that shouldn't be a privilege that can only be afforded by some people. That shouldn't be something where people have to worry about if they can afford their flats and the rents. We have to make sure that housing is something that is provided to everyone, no matter what. So I would say, you Christian, already told us that there is a big sector of public funded housing, 300 flats in Austria, approximately 300,000 flats. We have a big sector of non-profit cooperative housing, which is also a great thing, and I think you're very active in this sector. But still, as you said, if we would work on making these sectors way bigger, this would also translate to better or more affordable rents for all the other people who are living in the private sector or in the investment sector of housing. And we don't have to forget that. And so we really have to work on the things that we make public housing and non-profit cooperative housing a thing that is more present again. Because, well, the real wages are stagnant for decades now if they're not decreasing. And that makes housing also an aspect of class struggle, and as such we have to address it. We have to make the people realize and also support their realization that there's something wrong, and we have to break the cycle of profit logic in housing, since housing is a fundamental right.
Merci beaucoup. Maintenant, je vais donner la parole à Enrique. C'est vrai que le cas que Enrique
Jetzt ist Enrique an der Reihe.
parce que c'est un mouvement d'association de voisins.
Das ist it is a neighborhood association in Madrid. And
voisin qui est spécifique de Madrid, et c'est pour ça que c'est une expérience intéressante. Merci beaucoup d'être ici, Enrique.
A very interesting experience that he wants to share with us. Thank you.
Lo primero, muchas gracias por la invitación a este encuentro, que me parece algo muy interesante y que puede ser muy productivo para un futuro próximo, espero, de conseguir alianzas, uniones, ayudas para mejorar el problema de la vivienda.
J'avais pas dit, mais je vais traduire directement de l'espagnol. Je vais traduire moi directement.
So I'm going to translate from the Spanish into French. So there's going to be short delays. So thank you for the invitation. My name is Enrique Villalobos from the Regional Federation of Neighborhood Associations of Madrid. We are a citizens movement working to defend civil rights and to build livable cities and solidary cities.
En España, la vivienda está incluida en el artículo 47 de la Constitución española y en teoría es un derecho, pero en la realidad pues no lo es.
En Espagne, ce que nous disons, c'est que le logement est un droit, parce que c'est pas une marchandise, c'est inscrit dans la Constitution.
Housing is a right, not a business. It is enshrined in our Constitution in Article 47.
Le logement est un droit. That
it is a right, but this is far from guaranteed. So it's up to us to turn that promise into a reality.
Voy a hacer un repaso rápido por la situación de la vivienda en España. Me voy a saltar lo que ya ha comentado Sandra, que tiene que ver con la juventud. Y bueno, lo primero quizás es lo que está ocurriendo también en toda Europa, y es que los precios de la vivienda no paran de subir. En el último año han subido un 20% el precio de la venta y un 15% el precio del alquiler.
Let me just briefly explain the situation in Spain, especially in Madrid. First of all, young people is what I'd like to focus on. Sandra mentioned it before, but the price spikes make it very difficult for young people to move out.
Normalmente, desde el neoliberalismo, nos van a decir que esto es un problema entre la oferta y la demanda y que esto se resuelve con más oferta. Pero lo cierto es que en Madrid, solo en la ciudad de Madrid hay proyectadas más de 150.000 viviendas y el precio no para de subir. Por lo tanto, en realidad, ese mercado, si no tiene reglas, pues evidentemente no funciona.
That means it's a problem of the market of supply and demand, especially because in Madrid, currently there are over 150,000 new homes being planned. So it's not just a problem of supply and demand, because there's also a lot of speculation in terms of rent prices.
En España hay, según el Instituto Nacional de Estadística, 3,8 millones de viviendas vacías y solo en la ciudad de Madrid hay 97.000.
In Spain,
there are currently, according to the Institute of Statistics, 3.8 million empty homes. And only in Madrid city, there are 97,000. That's just Madrid.
Por lo tanto, bueno, hay una retención especulativa.
And of course, this is speculation with housing.
Hay que añadir que la vivienda social en España es escasa. En el conjunto del Estado hay un 3,3% de vivienda social. En la comunidad en la que yo vivo apenas es de un 1,1%, mientras que la media en Europa pues está por encima del 9%.
So the problem of social housing is evident. Social housing in Spain represents only 3.3% of the housing stock, which in Madrid it's about 1.7% of the overall residences, and in Europe the average is about 9%.
En España, que es un país turístico, la presión turística está también contribuyendo a romper el mercado, ¿no? Y para que os hagáis una idea, en Madrid, ciudad, hay más viviendas turísticas ilegales que pisos sociales pone la ciudad a disposición de la gente más precaria.
Another very important element is the tourism, which is distorting the market to a very great extent. In Madrid, there are more illegal tourist rentals than public rental homes managed by the municipal housing agency.
La vivienda en Europa, en el mundo, pero en Madrid, que es de donde yo vengo, se ha convertido en un activo financiero y no en un recurso social para la mayoría social.
So the problem with housing is that it's treated as a financial asset. So it results in speculation, and that is a bad thing.
Merci beaucoup pour faire cet encadrement de la situation générale.
For giving us this general idea about Austria, about Europe, about the problem of the young population in Spain, and also about the housing situation and speculation in Madrid. And we are now entering the second part of our plenary, and it's going to be about solutions. What can the social movements, left parties, and also the trade unions do, and also the young people, of course, to solve the problem with housing? I hope it's evident that there's not one best practice or one model that works, but if the social movements and the young people's organizations and the left parties work together with the trade unions, it makes a lot of pressure, creates a lot of pressure, and can present also solutions. And I would like to give the floor to Christoph now. Christian, excuse me.
Sorry, Christoph.
Or Christoph.
Thanks a lot. What my colleague Christoph told us is right. We are not in heaven in Austria, but I think we are, let's say, better off than other countries. And I mentioned the town of Graz, and I mentioned the town of Salzburg a couple of minutes ago. And I think the town of Graz, where I'm from, has a communist mayor since about 5 years now, or something like this. And I think the reason why this is so is the social housing market, or the housing market in Graz, because other parties didn't care about that. This is what I think is one of the reasons why the Communist Party in Graz is that strong. More or less, it's in Salzburg as well, I think. What comes in my mind when I hear something about the difficulties of the Austrian market is the following. I have to explain something, where the money comes from. The money comes from subsidies from the government, and the subsidies are an extra tax, if you will, kind of a tax. Each and everybody who works in Austria, who is insured in Austria, have to pay 1% of the gross salary to a specific pot. Let's call it pot. And this pot is about 3.5 to 4 billion euros a year. And out of that 3.5 to 4 billion a year, the government spends money to the so-called Länder in Austria. And for those who are not coming from Austria, Austria has 9 Länder, just like countries, just like Germany or something. And each and every country can do what it wants. That was not true until 2008. And at that time, there was a new law that the country, the land, can do with this money what it wants. And at that time, we had the financial crisis. So what did some Länder? They subsidized their own budget. Nothing else. But they didn't build houses. They didn't subsidize social housing. And this is a really a great fault in our country. So what we as trade unionists want to have is an earmark of this so-called tax, or Wohnbaubeitrag, as it calls in German. It has to be earmarked. So this was true until 2008, that this money goes to subsidized houses, and nowadays you can do what you want. And if you compare all those 9 countries in Austria, you will find countries, especially this country which surrounds Vienna, it's called Low Austria. And this Low Austria spends money for each and everything what is not worth doing. They were completely bankrupt at the end of the day, let's say this. And so they needed money. And they spent the money what should go to the subsidized housing market to their own needs. This was a big fault, and this is still true until now. So what we as trade unionists want to have is an earmark of this subsidy, which is about 3.5 to 4 billion a year. That's loads of money. This is really much money. What we also want to have is, especially in the large cities, just like Vienna or Graz, there are railway tracks, old stations which are not needed. There are military buildings and things like this. They are not needed any longer. And what we want to have is that this land, which is, let's say, in the city itself, not on the periphery, in the city itself, that this should be also just for social housing. That we can build that. We still build, but not enough. So this must be true in Austria. For the largest cities, especially for Vienna, for Salzburg, for Graz, or if you heard about Innsbruck, it's a town which is really in the Alps. So no flat land, just the river, and on the right and left-hand side, there's a little bit of flat land. So you can't build a house there. These are really problems. So this is the first thing we want to have. An earmark of the Wohnbaubeitrag, this special tax, what we have in Austria. I pay for that, you pay for that. Each and everybody who works in this country pays for it. So it's a kind of a contract between generations. So, for instance, if you're 80 or 60 now and you have your flat, you also pay for it. Because someone paid for that when you were 25 or something. So it's a kind of a contract between generations. And this should be not only the crucial point, but it should be earmarked. This is what we as trade unionists want to have. And this is what also we as trade unionists who own 2 of these companies really want to have, because we have a lack of money. If you want to build flats on the hinterland of Vienna, Because Vienna, as I told you, is growing. And people want to live, each and everybody has in, not each and everybody, but I think each and everybody has in his mind, in his DNA, it should be quiet. It should be somewhere where I have public transport. It should have a balcony, and it should be environmentally friendly. And I want to have 4 rooms for my family. This is the wish. And we can have wishes. In 2 months' time, we have Christmas. So each and everybody can have wishes. But if you want to have wishes, and they have to become true, you have to have money. But we don't have it. And then I tell you a secret, because I told you a couple of minutes ago that I'm also a member of the supervisory board of 2 private-owned companies. We do have these private-owned companies that we earn money from the private market, because in Austria, still people exist who want to pay for a flat 800,000 euros. And if they want to pay 800,000 euros, they should pay 800,000 euros. And there we get the money. And then we have to subsidize our own companies on the public market. And if we have the money from the private market, which goes to the subsidized market, to the social market, we can build more houses. Because there is a need of more houses. Because, as I told you, especially Vienna is growing, and Austria is growing. And if we look at not also the number, because we know that, let's say, 20, 25 years ago, one man, one woman in Austria lives on the average on 20 square meters. Now it's 28 square meters. That means that you have more square meters per flat. That's one thing. The other thing is the quality went up. We built houses in the 60s and 70s and the 80s with no central heating. Now it's compulsory. Each and every has a central heating. You can't build a house without a balcony nowadays. Everybody wants to have a balcony. So that costs lots of money. So the quality went up, or if you look at the floors, if you look at this floor, it's a wooden floor. That's costly. 20 years ago, we built floors, just very cheap ones, not nice ones, but they were floors. Nowadays, people want to have a wooden floor. That costs money. So the prices went up. But we as trade unionists have a social thinking. And we want to keep the rents as low as possible. So if you compare the rents nowadays in our enterprises, they're not that much higher than 20 years ago. If you want to have a flat of, let's say, 75 square meters, you get it for 600 euros plus. If you want to have heating or something, or telephone, or you need power supply and things like this, it costs you 200 euros on average in Austria. But the rent itself is 600 euros. And this, I think, is more or less affordable still. But my colleague is right that the politics doesn't look at this, or didn't look good enough at this. So we do have problems, but I think if we compare our country, if we compare the city of Vienna with other cities, with other countries, we are on the better side. So to summarize, I would say we have to earmark this tax, and we have to have flat, which is in the hand nowadays of the government, or of the federal railway system, or of the military, and which is not needed. It should be just for social housing and nothing else. So the pressure on the market goes down. This would be one of our wishes to Santa Claus, which comes in 2 months' time. Thank you.
our response to the housing crisis as Izquierda Unida is as part of the Sumar coalition is based on three main actions: immediate protection, structural reform, and public investment. But I'm not discovering anything new for you. But it's important. I'm going to explain what is doing the Sumar coalition and Izquierda Unida now, the practical things, and then the cultural thing. In the practical thing, Sumar has proposed an emergency housing decree with several measures. Freeze all rental contracts and extend them for at least 3 more years to avoid several increases of prices. Regulate temporary room and tourist rentals, and fertilize fiscal and legal tools to stop speculation and ensure the housing returns to its social functions. As Izquierda Unida also wants to arrive to invest the 2% of GDP in housing policies and build 150,000 new public homes every year till achieve the 20% of public housing stock by 2035. But this is practical measures that we are not discovering anything new. We all know what we have to do. But do this is not easy. This is the practical thing. But when you are in the government, when you try to put these measures and put in practical all these measures, you face up that this is not easy. And I'm not saying this is not easy because we are in a coalition government whose housing minister prefers to meet Airbnb than the tenants union, or because they prefer to spend more money buying in defense than in housing, or because we have a housing law whose competences are for the regions, the autonomous communities, and we have some regions governed by the right that they don't want to apply the law, and nothing happens. I'm saying this because this is a cultural thing. This is a cultural battle with the real estate lobby that has a lot of power across the world. But in Spain, this is the funny story. As you know, we are in the Ministry of Youth and Children, and we have no competences in housing. But we decided that we want to do what we can to protect the tenants, protect the young people. And we decided to create a tenants' right guide. We published together with the Spanish Youth Institute, which is inside of the ministry. And this is not only a guide, this is an empowering tool with plain languages that helps people to defend themselves against illegal fees, abusive clauses, and real estate scams. But what it seems that it's a simple guide, a small guide that we don't have competences, and it's a guide, okay? The real estate lobby decided to send a letter to the Spanish president, Pedro Sánchez, asking him to erase our guide because it's very harmful for their interests. And in this letter that they sent to the president, they said that the ministry is really bad, that they are really angry with us, for a simple guide for that a ministry with no competences in housing made. Why this happens? Because they don't like when we tell people their rights. They're not angry for the guide. They're angry when we tell people how to prevent their illegal and trying to abuse power among the majority. In Spain, when we see it's not just a housing crisis, it's what I was telling before, it's a power struggle between two opposite models. The market that wants business and the majority that needs to protect this as a human right. Beyond the laws, there is a cultural dimension. And this cultural dimension is faced on this guide because knowledge is power. And when you tell the young tenants, and when the young tenants know how to avoid pay the agency's fees, that's not a small thing. That's a political act of emancipation. That can seem something small, something simple, something without dimension. But this is a political act of emancipation because we are giving the young people the power of knowledge. That's why this is not just a governmental publication. This is more a tool for everyday resistance. In Spain, every time we take a step to protect the tenants, some of them said that we are attacking the market. We don't care about the market. I care about to protect the majority. I care to protect about the people who lives, works, and pay rent every month while others take profits for their basic needs for a home. So yes, if defending the right to housing makes speculators uncomfortable, we're fine with that. Because sometimes defending your rights makes those who violates them uncomfortable. And that's the point that we have to face.
Okay, so what to do? The first thing is we have to reaffirm the growing public understanding that the housing sector must not remain under the dominance of the capital pro-profit interests. And this is to make sure that those wish lists to Santa Claus become powerful political demands. This is the baseline, because without that, all the following things I'm saying will be void. Secondly, we need to strengthen the legal framework to make sure that non-profit cooperative housing and public housing offer affordable rents on an ongoing basis forever, in the best case, that they provide a more easy access for everyone, and that they are protected from privatization attempts. That's very important. Third, we have to reform tenancy law, I think, of course, in Austria, but I guess in very many other countries as well. We have to make it understandable for the daily users, for those people who live there. We have to unify it. We have to abolish limited contracts. And in Austria, we have to end the automatical rent increases that are coupled with the consumer price index. Fourth, we need a broad investment in public housing and non-profit cooperative housing, because our long-term goal should be that we push back the pro-profit market. We want to declare a fight on them. Fifth, we need to work on the financial political framework, and this is where you were saying a lot of stuff that we are also supporting. So there's first, in Austria, the Wohnbaubeitrag you mentioned and explained. That has to be put back to public housing. We need better land allocation policies. So if there is free land that is owned by the state or by the townships that needs to be put to the services of public housing. We need a reinstallment of an investment bank for subsidized housing. We maybe should reallocate some investments that go into war and other industry sectors into public services as housing. Sixth, and right now we have to fight trends like short-term tourism, Airbnb, speculative investments, other forms of platform capitalism in the housing markets. That is a rising thing. We have to fight vacancies and stuff like that. We believe that public housing and non-profit cooperative housing is an investment in the future where the people in generations to come will profit from these things, as it is in Vienna. Here you can visit those buildings that were built 100 years ago, and still they are standing and still they are providing living space. Public housing and the cooperative housing can make it possible that there are affordable rents on the long run. We can make it possible that there is some flexibility, because maybe in one point in your life you want to have the big 4-room flat, but when you get older, maybe you don't need that much space and the 4-room flat is more of an issue for you. We can better guarantee that there will be the environmental sustainability guaranteed. We also want to work on good working conditions for those people who built those houses. If we are focusing on those things, I think it would be possible to bring back housing to those people who actually reside in those houses that are built.
Bien. Bueno, en nuestra opinión hay 6 líneas de acción que son esenciales para poder resolver el problema en España, y muchas o varias de estas serían también equivalentes en Europa.
Notre opinion est qu'il y a 6 axes pour réguler le marché et protéger les habitants.
There are 6 axes for regulating the market and for protecting the right to housing. So these are basic principles that we should apply in Madrid and all over Europe.
Es esencial, que es combatir la especulación. Una segunda sería frenar la gentrificación y la expulsión de la población de sus lugares de residencia. 3, actuar y redistribuir las plusvalías urbanas. 4, fiscalizar la financiarización global de la vivienda, y esta es esencial en toda Europa. 5, recuperar el protagonismo de lo público. Y 6, invertir más y mejor en vivienda.
Ces 6 axes sont pour réguler le marché et protéger les
These
habitants.
6 key principles include combating speculation, stopping gentrification and the displacement of some groups of the population. 3rd, updating and redistributing urban income. We also need to hold global financial actors in housing accountable. We also have to restore the role of the public sector. And 6, we need to invest more and better in housing.
Algún desarrollo de alguna de estas líneas en medidas concretas. Por un lado, al menos en España, necesitamos un planeamiento urbanístico al servicio del derecho a la vivienda. Y eso implica subir las cesiones obligatorias de suelo al 15% e implantar reservas del 30% de vivienda asequible en el suelo urbano consolidado, protegiendo el uso residencial y planificar con prioridad la mezcla social.
Il a dit qu'il va développer certains de ces axes en mesures concrètes. En premier lieu, l'urbanisme doit
I will mention some specific measures. First of all, urban planning has to take place with a view to the right, or based on the right of housing. We have to raise the mandatory land allocations for public housing to 15%, and 30% of new housing in new urban areas should be affordable, so residential use must be protected.
Debemos, en nuestra opinión, prohibirlas en aquellos edificios que son de uso residencial y luego pues la regulación deberá implicar un registro real, condiciones de habitabilidad, bueno, en general que la vivienda turística no puede devorar a la vivienda residencial.
Il faut réguler sérieusement les logements touristiques. Il faut les
We
interdire dans les
also
zones
have to
où
regulate tourist rentals.
Il faut les interdire dans les zones où
In
l'impact est critique.
residential areas, this should be banned altogether. We also need a public registry of flats rented out to tourists, and we also need an effective sanctioning system, particularly for platforms. Tourist housing must not replace residential housing.
En materia de vivienda, gravísimo. Posiblemente esta es de las cosas que nos diferencian más del resto de los países europeos. Y por lo tanto en España necesitamos datos fiables desde observatorios públicos de vivienda con una metodología común a la europea, ya que sin esos datos fiables es muy difícil en España hacer una buena política de vivienda. Bueno, esto...
En Espagne, un déficit de données réelles sur le logement.
In Spain, we do not have sufficient reliable data on housing. We need public observation offices for housing, applying common European methods, because if we do not have reliable data, we cannot make good housing policy. We need a common language when we talk about affordable housing. So we also need data that we can compare with other European countries.
Para mí es importante decirlo también. En España necesitamos un parque público potente de alquiler asequible, mínimo del 20%, para podernos acercar a las medias europeas. En España tenemos un banco malo, que le llamamos, que es la Sareb, un banco que se creó para absorber todos los activos tóxicos cuando la crisis de la vivienda, y hoy está al servicio del Estado, pero todavía va muy lentamente dando vivienda a la gente. Y entonces necesitamos que haya una implicación real, de manera ya clara, de la Sareb. Y a nivel presupuestario, lo dije antes en el taller de feminismo, el Estado quiere aplicar un 0,08% del Producto Interior Bruto al problema de la vivienda. En nuestra opinión, no deberíamos tener menos del 2% del PIB.
Il a dit que, bon, déjà Sandra avait dit cette mesure concrète, mais en Espagne on a besoin
As Sandra has already mentioned, we need public housing, affordable housing, at least 20%. We also need land. A bank in Spain suffered during the crisis of 2008, having gathered many toxic assets. And we really need financial means for housing. 0.08% of GDP are invested in housing, but we need much more, at least 2% of GDP for housing in order to achieve a level comparable to other European countries.
Lo dije antes, ¿no? Uno de los problemas que lo aflora es la vivienda vacía. Entonces necesitamos movilizar la vivienda vacía existente, ya sea con recargos, con impuestos, aplicando de verdad lo que es el tanteo y retracto, que es la posibilidad de que el Estado pueda ser comprador o facilitador de la compra en el caso de que se quiera vender, y, si fuera preciso, la expropiación del usufructo, es decir, expropiar no la propiedad, pero sí el uso de la vivienda. Otro de los problemones que hay en España es que durante muchos años se llegaron a construir 6 millones de viviendas protegidas. Hoy por hoy prácticamente todas esas viviendas son parte del mercado libre porque se permite desclasificarla. Y nosotros entendemos que la vivienda que es protegida lo tiene que ser para siempre. Y todo esto a su vez tiene su cara más amarga en los desahucios, que hoy por hoy, aunque por ley teóricamente no puede haber un desahucio sin alternativa habitacional, día a día vemos cómo se desahucia cada día a cientos de familias sin alternativa habitacional o, en el mejor de los casos, dándoles un vale para que tengan 2 semanas en un albergue.
Un des problèmes j'ai déjà parlé de lui, c'est
One of the problems that have already been mentioned are vacancies, vacant apartments. We have to mobilize them. There are several measures, for example, imposing taxes, also preemptive purchase and repurchase rights, and they should also be expropriated if these apartments are vacant, if necessary. And another problem that we see in Spain is the reallocation of social housing. We have 6 million public housing flats, but they are not protected and are sometimes then rented out via the private market. So we need a means to protect these apartments, these public housing apartments. Even the coalition government has already taken some measures. Every month there are, we see that people are driven out of their apartments. And this has to stop if these people cannot find other apartments then.
El 85% de las viviendas son anteriores a los años 90, al año 90, 1990. Y por lo tanto tiene un parque muy envejecido. Entonces necesitamos que mínimo el 3% de las viviendas anualmente sean rehabilitadas, mínimo. Y para eso pues, es también imprescindible que se atienda primero a las familias vulnerables, porque la mayor parte de los fondos europeos que han llegado, de los Next Generation, han llegado, o sea, han sido, digamos, captadas por la gente que más poder adquisitivo tenía.
Le dernier point, c'est la rénovation massive et abordable.
My last point is that we need comprehensive renovation, affordable renovation. Most of the apartments were constructed before the 1990s, so we have to renovate at least 3% of all apartments every year, particularly for families living in precarious living conditions. Of course, it would also be an aim to reduce energy prices to make housing more affordable.
Además de en España, hemos hablado ya de que el problema es generalizado. Entonces, encuentros como este son esenciales para que forjemos alianzas, para que nos conozcamos y para que al final, entre todas y todos, podamos impedir que el futuro plan de vivienda asequible que está diseñando la Unión Europea acabe siendo una derivación de dinero a las constructoras y a los de siempre. Necesitamos que Europa se tome en serio la vivienda como un derecho y no la vivienda como un negocio.
Et pour finir, simplement dire que ces rencontres au niveau international sont aussi très importantes parce qu'on a besoin de ces
Finally, I think that meetings like this one are very important because we need to exchange our experiences. We have to establish alliances between trade unions and civil society because we need to make sure that housing remains or again becomes affordable, because housing is a right and not a luxury.
Merci beaucoup. Donc maintenant la parole est à vous.
Thank you very much. And now you have the floor. We still have 20 minutes left, and then all the participants here will have the opportunity to ask your questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. 20 minutes left. Thank you very much.
Hello everybody, my name is Stefano Aman, Communist Refoundation Party of Italy. Well, I come from a city, Milan, where which is affected of a phenomenon which share with several cities across Europe, the so-called gentrification, which has experienced since the early 2000s years, and this phenomenon which affect also the let me say the lower middle class. So the political situation is quite difficult to analyze, and the sharing. The result is the merely expulsion of the working class from the city, not only the center city, out of the outskirts also, especially the outskirts, producing alongside the city dormitory neighborhood, a lot of. And as communists, we are working on it, even in cooperation with trade union and the social movement, of course. And we are proposing, we are fighting for public housing, as you, all of you, were talking about. And for the aim for not only justice, not only social justice, but especially to lower the rents, as you pointed out before my intervention. But I would like to put on the table another fact that affect especially my town, my city, which is the conflict between two major issues, political issues, which are the aim to stop the consumption of soil and the understandable needs of house or public house for the working class. So we are open to suggestions from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tu décides, hein?
More questions.
Tu décides qui?
I don't know. I don't see who asked. Merlin, au fond. Facile.
Thank you. So, hello friends and comrades. As Ismael mentioned, I'm Merlin from PVDA-PTB, and I wanted to make a very, very short comment, and most importantly, a very practical question. So the comment. As a party, we've been kind of lacking in the fight for housing access, so we are very in support of the EL campaign in this matter. And as Sandra mentioned, it's especially a problem for the youth in the working class. Basically, you can work as a young person. You have your partner which is also working. You go to the bank, and even though you're both working, bank doesn't agree to give you a credit. So it's becoming, it was a huge problem, and it's becoming bigger and bigger. And we see with the campaign that this problem is a continental problem. So my question, and as I said, it's a very practical one, and I'm not sure the panel is, how to say it, my question is, basically the coffers, the public coffers are empty because our governments are deciding to apply other politics, not answering the necessity to guarantee the right to housing. And my question is, where do you find the money to build a new public and accessible and affordable housing? And the sub-question is, in the construction of new affordable and public houses, what are the mechanisms you use to guarantee this right? For example, in Belgium, we are fighting for a percentage, basic percentage, in each construction from the real estate developers. They have to have like 5, 10, 15% of public and affordable housing. So that's a sub-question. In your countries, in your practice, what are the weapons, the tools that you have or that you manage to obtain in this fight? Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Merlin. Other questions? Ici, Panayota.
Jutta?
Yes, hi. Thanks, everyone. I have two practical questions, mostly for the Austrian speakers. One is, if you are considering, you explained the system of 1% of taxing of everybody that is working in Austria. So I'm just thinking, in the climate of tax the rich, is there any proposal or is there any efforts in the city halls? I guess this is a governmental thing, it's not a city competence, but is there any thought or any revendication that people with higher or very high incomes contribute with more than 1% to try and find some money? And then the second thing would be, again for you too, but maybe for the others as a perspective, working on housing issues and the necessity to, since it is a human right and it is a public good, but we have so little or no, so we need to prioritize, and the priority is mostly given to vulnerable families or people. We have faced a little bit the fact that this is used by extreme right, saying that the population has risen because foreigners come, or these poor lazy people, white trash, that they don't want to work, they want to take the social housing. So how did you manage to counter the extreme right rhetorics around the need to provide first for the most vulnerable? Thank you.
More questions?
Thank you. Coming from a country that, as you know, has a huge problem of housing, Greece, you know that, it's at 45 that people get emancipated in Greece. Till 45, they live with their families. Huh? I have two questions. One of them is already been covered by Panayota about the taxation. And the other one is, among people discussing housing in Greece, we came up with the idea or a possibility of examining the plan to build not just houses, but the possibility to have blocks with public spaces, both public and private spaces, so it may come cheaper, so that everybody or every couple, every family may have its private, of course, possibilities, and share common spaces like as living rooms or whatever, or spaces to gather together. Is this a possibility that internationally is going to be examined, not to have ghettos, of course, but to create strength, to strengthening communities, artists, for instance, or students, or whatever. So I would like to know whether this is a feasible idea, and if it has been examined also in other countries.
If there are no more questions, I will give. Pardon. S'il n'y a pas d'autres questions, je vais donner la parole.
If there's no more questions, then I'm going to give the floor to the speakers. But we have the possibility to ask more questions. So we'll start with Enrique.
Sí. Bien, sí, a ver, es verdad que mucha gente que podríamos denominar clase obrera o working class, ¿no? Está siendo expulsada al extrarradio.
C'est vrai qu'il y a beaucoup de gens, comme disait le camarade de
It's
la
true
qu'on peut
that
classes ouvrières qui sont
the working class is dismissed or expelled from the city. That is true.
Se debe a que hay gente que tiene mucho dinero fuera de nuestros países que está comprando.
And of course, that is because there are people with a lot of money who want to buy in the city center.
En nuestra opinión, no se debe permitir comprar vivienda si no es para residencia, si no es para habitarla o, en su defecto, para alquilarla a precios por debajo del mercado.
En notre opinion, on ne devrait pas permettre d'acheter des logements
it
si
shouldn't
c'est pas pour vivre dans
be allowed to buy living space if it's to rent or to speculate.
Y esto me lleva a responder en cierto modo a lo que decía el compañero de Bélgica, que entiendo que preguntaba que de dónde sacamos el dinero, ¿no?
And that leads me to the question of our Belgian comrade, where does the money come from?
Es que en estos momentos probablemente el problema no es un problema de liquidez económica ni tan siquiera un problema financiero.
At the moment, the problem is not of liquidity, but it's a financial one.
Es un problema de que nuestro modelo permite que se pueda hacer un uso especulativo de la vivienda. Efectivamente, siempre será necesario construir vivienda, siempre será necesario rehabilitar vivienda.
The problem is the law. Currently, it is allowed to speculate with living space. And so you can build as much as you like. You can build for rent or for sale.
El peso del problema esté ahí. El peso del problema está en cómo se están utilizando viviendas en las que podría vivir cualquier persona de la clase obrera y que se están utilizando para otras cosas.
So the problem currently is not the usage of the living space where the working class can live. It's very often used for speculation or for other purposes. And the other questions were more directed to the other panelists. So I'm going to pass the floor to them.
Okay, well, so one of the questions was, what about the thing of we have to construct on free soil, and on the other hand, we have housing needs? I would say this is a problem indeed. One of the solutions could be refitting old structures, but this is just, that won't fulfill all the demands. I think that public housing or housing where the state or the government is more involved will be more easily to bring to build in a sustainable way, in a way that is on the one hand like not just flat on flat on flat on flat and no green spaces in between and stuff like that, but also they should, many people on little places but with green spaces. And I think I'm not sure if the private sector is willing to commit to green spaces because they are costly and stuff like that. So that is why I'm also thinking that some of the environmental issues of the houses that will be needed could be tackled better by public housing. Then to the question of what about the extreme right? As you might have heard, I always said public housing and not social housing because I really want to promote the idea that this is not just housing for the deplorable people, but this is public housing where, in the best of all cases, everyone has access to it. It should not be a segregation for those people who can't afford something else. No, it's public housing that belongs to us all. Models of financing this. I think Christian is better in explaining this, but of course there are models of like public-private partnerships in Austria as well. There is the model that private investors build a house and they allocate some flats for public housing reasons. I think it is better than nothing, but that is not the model we should strive towards to. And we also make the examination that some of those flats are not in the nice buildings where the expensive flats go, but they buy other flats to make them the social housing flats elsewhere in the city, and those pristine buildings for the investment people remain for them.
About the possibility, about the possibility to have these buildings with common spaces. We have entire families, couples with kids, living in a room in Spain, in Madrid. This is not about having a place to live. This is about having a place to live with dignity. We have a lot, millions of empty buildings in Spain. We have to return these buildings to the social functions. If a family, if someone wants to live, wants to share spaces, wants to live in a different type of buildings, in a different type of houses, it has to be because they want to, not because they don't have other choice. And that's what we are fighting for. And that's what we are creating these public policies to not, what I was talking before. I don't want to attack the market, but I want to protect the majority. I want to give them the possibility to live with dignity. And if that breaks the market, so be it. So, sorry, not sorry. But I think that the possibility to create another, a medium, possibility to have a building or places to share spaces, because it's a place where they can afford what they can afford, it's not enough for us. It can be a possibility if you want to share, but it can be, we have to fight to achieve if I need to move to Madrid, I'm from Barcelona, I moved to Madrid for a job offer, and what we need to achieve is that if I'm looking for a place to live, for a rent a flat, and I look to the most famous app for this in Spain, Idealista, and I look the most near place to my job, like 40 minutes away by feet, and I will look for a flat with one room, and I want to pay less than 1,000, it's empty. I don't have any option in the map. It's completely empty. I have to go outside of Madrid to achieve that. My flat is really, really, really tiny. I pay 750 euros 3 years before I rent that flat. Now, my flat costs 1,100 euros. This is not possible. We have to make public policies to make people live with dignity, not only to live. So our policies has to be with this objective. If this means that we break the market, we will break it.
Well, according to gentrification, the colleague of Italy told us that, example from Milan, what we think as trade unionists, but also what the official policy of this town of Vienna is the following. If you want to have a flat, a subsidized flat, a social housing in a social house, there is a specific threshold, and up to this threshold, you can earn money and you're subsidized. You can get in a social house. And this threshold is, hopefully I have the correct number, but it's just like this, the net income a year for one person who wants to get in a room, or not a room, a flat, is 56,000 euros, net income. Net, not gross, net. And if you have a second person, for instance, you're a couple, it's about 70,000 euros net income. And things like this, and it's up to about 100,000 euros. So what I think is, if you're, let's say, 25 or 30 years old, and you want to have an own flat, and you want to have a subsidized flat, the possibility that you are below that threshold is very high. So this is the one thing, and I think it's a good one, because the thresholds are so high. The other thing is, the official policy of Vienna, at least since let's say, the end of the Second World War, is that we have social houses in each and every center of the town, not just in one or two. And if you're familiar with Vienna, it has 23 districts. And in each and every of these districts you will find social houses. So it's a combination of each and every people which we have in Austria. And not such a, what we call Ghettoisierung, such a segregation of people. It's a mismatch of each and everybody in Austria. So this is what we think a good situation. The examples from common units, we did it in the past, so that you share, let's say, the kitchen, but we also have things just like a small swimming pool. In some of these houses are saunas. You have a common playing ground. You have a common playing room, even for winter days, where it's a big bong table and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, people, at least where I come from, think my home is my castle. Do you know what I mean? So you can offer some common spaces, but you cannot, as a dictator, say, okay, from the 1st of November 2025 onwards, we have common space. This is not, that won't function in that country. My home is my castle. Also, the colleague from Milan told us something about, I think it was you, that the trade-off between special planning. Yeah, we need more houses, but on the other hand, there is less space. For instance, for Greenland, and nowadays all of us think about climate change. This had also something to do with climate change. Because when you build a house somewhere on the periphery, you have to have the infrastructure. That means you have a street. That means you have a supermarket and blah, blah, blah. The whole area of infrastructure. And people who live on the periphery want to go by car to the supermarket on Friday evening. That's the truth. That's just like it works. It's not my thinking. It's just like how it is. But what we think is also in common with the state or the town of Vienna. We want to create a house or want to build a house there where there is public transport, for instance. A tram line or even a tube. And probably some of you heard about Seestadt, which is on the periphery of Vienna, and the line which goes there goes to the so-called Seestadt. About 10 minutes from here, there is the periphery of Vienna, and there is a tube line, especially for those who are working and living outside. But there is a trade-off between thinking of the environmentally friendly town on the one side and building a new house on the other side, because there is a demand of new houses. As I told you, we have 550,000 people more just in Vienna and 2.2 million more in Austria than 25 years ago. And they want to live somewhere. And this Wohnbaubeitrag, this tax 1%, there's no political discussion about that. But there's also, and this is a good story, each coin has two sides, you know. On the one side, you can have, let's say, those people earning more money have to levy more taxes. Let's say 2%, not 1%. But the other side of the coin is that we don't have a political discussion in Austria, that we don't have the tax. Because if there is, let's say, a right-wing majority, a right-wing majority, probably they would attack that 1%. But nowadays, thanks God, that there is no political discussion about that tax, and this is the good side of the coin. The bad side is, as you told us, why shouldn't people who earn, let's say, 200,000 euros a year pay not 1%, but 1.5%, for instance? And others who earn, let's say, 30,000 euros a year pay 0.55%, for instance. But there's no political, I have never heard something about that. But the good thing of the coin is that there is no discussion about this 1%, so there is money. And this is, at the end of the day, we are better off than other countries. And what also came in my mind, where the money comes from, this is also a wish to Santa Claus from the Austrian trade unions. There should be what we call Wohnbaubank. This is a building association bank, or whatever you call it in English. So there is loads of money from the European Bank of Investment. There is money in Luxembourg. And what we as trade unionists want to have a bank that the money comes from Luxembourg or from Brussels, if you want, is here in Vienna, and then with low interest rates, we can have money from that bank and build houses at the end of the day. This is what we want. And this is what we nearly have in Austria. But you know that there was, a couple of years ago, a government in Austria led by Kurz. And they said no. The finance minister at that time said, oh, there's no need for such a bank. Why do you want to have such a bank? Although there's money from Brussels. But they said no. But we want a bank, so probably we have the chance. There's a new government now, since March this year. Probably they have They listen to us. And sometimes, there will be a bank, money from Brussels to Vienna with low interest rates, and then we have more money to build houses. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Pour finir, je ne vais pas évidemment répondre à toutes les questions, mais je voulais
I will not answer all the questions, but before we come to an end, I want to emphasize some elements. We have talked about housing, but housing is not just social housing. In Vienna and other cities, we talk about a right to housing. If we talk about social housing, we talk about the class struggle, a struggle between different classes. When I talk about poorer people, I talk about people who cannot afford heating or paying the rent at the end of the month. And that's a reality for many families of the working class in the European Union. And we must not be ashamed. The people who force us to live that way should be ashamed. If you live with your family in such a situation, you have to fight. And the far right always tells us that it's the others who are responsible, who make our lives hell. And those displacing us from our cities are people from the rich countries. I do not want to claim that all British, Austrian or German people are bad, but it is the fault of rich people. It's not a problems related to migrants. They are not to blame. If I talk to my friends and comrades in Spain, we agree that if you have a big house in Madrid, normally you don't see migrants or poor Spanish people living there, but rich people. So the problem is not migration, but rich people from northern countries displacing us from our cities. Merlin said something interesting in connection to money, and Enrique also talked about tourists. And I think it would be possible to introduce a tourist tax. Multinational companies are another problem in Berlin, Vienna. We see that these multinational companies rent out apartments to tourists. So that's not Spanish people renting out the apartments, but these are international funds buying entire houses and then renting apartments out to tourists. So that's all for profit. And there's a lot of money to be gained in that. Enrique also talked about that. Merlin also mentioned it. So multinational companies receive money, and at the same time, it is important to state that. And I know that trade unions communicate that, making it clear that too much money is used for armament. The European Central Bank, why did it decrease the interest rate for companies to 0.5%? While the interest rates for worker families were reduced to 0%. It is not multinational companies who give money to the central bank, it is us. We give money to the central bank. So they could offer loans to us with interest rates of 0%, but they do not do that. we do not want that only a few people are privileged. Housing is a right. When cities grow, there's of course a lot of profit to be gained from housing. And this is why housing has become a privilege of the elites. In 2026, we could gain a victory. It is going to be difficult, but when Ursula von der Leyen held her speech, we saw the reactions on social media. People said that housing is a right. And people say that because they know that people have had enough. They do not want to go on living like that. And thus we, the left party, has to create alliances with others in other countries. We have to create a strong movement advocating the rights of people needing housing every day. People know that we will not be able to go on like that. In 2026, you are going to see that the EU Commission is going to make money available, and this money has to be spent for the people, not for multinational companies. Thank you. I think that we have to go on fighting next year, continue our struggle, but that we can gain a lot for the working class. Thanks a lot.
Pardon, pour finir, parce que sinon j'oublie. Merci aux interprètes. Excusez-moi, j'avais rien dit. Merci aussi aux techniciens qui ont aidé toute la journée.
The technicians and interpreters who
Je vous rappelle de rendre les casques de traduction.
The whole day. Please return the headsets. I wish you a wonderful evening, maybe together with the young left, if you want to celebrate. I'm not young enough anymore. I want to thank the entire team of the European Left Party. I want to thank you for